ReviveFM or its management.
Hello, good afternoon. You are locked into ReviveFM 94.0 on the Power Hour with your host, myself, Louise Power. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. And on today's show, I have Karen Anderson. She is a social business specialist and she will be talking all things governance. Welcome to the show, Karen.
Thank you, Louise. Great to be here.
It's great to be here. And we are in a lockdown at the moment. The lockdown came into effect yesterday. So, of course, Karen is linking in with me virtually and we'll be discussing everything. And hopefully we'll have some of you calling in or leaving your questions on social media for me to read out to Karen. So how are you today and whereabouts in the country are you?
I'm good, thanks, Louise. I'm in a little village in the Fens, just west of Cambridge today.
Oh, Cambridge. And actually, in fact, Cambridge Judge Business School is where I know you from, isn't it?
Yes, we met on one of our social venture weekends, which we used to love running at the business school to get people into the school that hadn't been there before. And now, of course, we have to do that remotely too.
I know everything's changed, especially for education. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and a small introduction, telling everybody what it is that you do.
Well, I spend most of my time working at the business school, but I work in a little team that supports social entrepreneurs. So those are people who are trying to create businesses to change the world, to do some good. And we usually run a boot camp over a weekend, which is what Louise and I were talking about. At the moment, we now run a little half-day session every month to help people who might have come on the weekend just think through what their organization might look like if they started it, and we call it Getting Started. And we also run an incubator program. And on both of those projects, my focus is governance as well as general business advice.
I've never seen governance explained so well. But I was blown away when I saw it. You literally was able to break it down to a point where I could understand it. And also your movement when you was moving from different sector to different sector, and you was actually moving in the room as well. And I was just completely blown away from it. So I had to make sure that I got to know more about you and more about governance.
Yes, my governance dance has been done in many boardrooms as well as many lecture rooms. However, I've had to come up with ways of expressing it without all that movement.
So what can we explain to the listeners? What exactly is governance?
So governance is the system and processes that hold the business together. So it keeps everything working at a relationship to the government and also the relationship between the people who own the business, the people who are strategically responsible for the business, and then it interfaces with those people doing all the work. Right.
So it's the nooks and crannies that keeps everything together.
Yeah.
And would you say it's something rather like accountability?
It includes accountability. I think what's important is there are three areas of governance, and this is where my dance always comes in. And the three areas are who owns a business, and governance explains that ownership and the relationship of that ownership to the other pieces. And then there's the section of who's on the board or who are the trustees. So they're strategically accountable for the business, and governance explains how they work with the owners and how they work with the people doing the work on the ground. So it kind of gives you this framework for holding the pieces together and the framework for accountability.
Yeah, I can see that as a founder myself, juggling so many different hats, that can come across quite confusing because shareholder and operations and everything else. How do I apply the governance when I'm juggling so many different things as a founder? How does somebody that's a founder or an entrepreneur do that effectively?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand that in any one moment, you're actually only wearing one hat. And then we have to figure out what that hat is. And the first hat that you hold as a founder is the minute you decide that you're serious about this. It's not a hobby. It's not something you're doing alongside something else. You've decided to create a company to do this. That's what we call incorporation. And that's when governance first comes in. So incorporation literally means you create a new entity, a new legal entity. So we as human beings are legal entities and physical entities. A company or an incorporated charity or a social enterprise that's been incorporated are separate legal entities. And sometimes they're just a legal entity, and sometimes there's a building alongside them. So the first thing you do as a founder is create that new entity, and you are the parents of that entity. So you, as an owner, as a shareholder, or sometimes you might be called a member, are the parents of that organization. And what you decide as an owner is what you want to set it up as. So do you want it to be a company limited by shares social enterprise? Do you want it to be a community interest company? Do you want it to be a company limited by guarantee charity? So as the parents, you get to choose, and you say, this is what I want it to be. And you fill in a form and say, I'm the owner. This is what I'm doing. And when you decide the entity, you also choose the DNA. So that's when you get to choose what people call the constitution or the articles. It's a stack of legal clauses that say what that organization looks like and what people can do within it. And so that's your responsibility as the owner. And so when you're making decisions around what type of organization you're having, you're being an owner. The second stage as being an owner is deciding what you put in your articles and your constitution. And the third stage is giving responsibility of implementing what you've created to a board of directors. And then suddenly you're in the board of directors role. And this is where I move around and I go, well, we're moving from the one space to the other space. And as a board of directors, you are one person in that board, and you're accountable with everybody else. And initially, when you set it up, you're usually the only director, so it all falls on you. But you can get other people to join you. And in that role, you are there to obey the law and report to the government. And you're there to obey what the owners tell you in the constitution, in the articles. And then as a founder, you're suddenly doing all the work. And in that space, you're there to listen to the board of directors, which is you at that moment, and obey and report to them and say, this is what the business has been doing. So in each action you're playing, you are actually very clearly have a different hat on.
Yeah. Because my next question was, how does governance support a founder in creating what they really want? But is that within the articles in the Constitution then?
Yes.
Right.
And I think the first thing, I always talk about intention versus perception. And so we all start anything with an intention, and that's an internal thing, which nobody else can see. And it's other people's eyes on it that get the perception. And the first step when you create an organization of getting it out there, taking your intention and making it real, is actually writing down what you want that organization to do. Right. And when you create something off the shelf, it doesn't have what's called an objects clause, but you can say, I'm doing this to make this change in the world. And you write it in. And that effort of writing the words down to express what you want is that first stage of protecting your legacy.
Oh, wow. So interesting. So is governance the same? Is governance, whichever sector you're from, whether you're an SME or you're from the corporate industry, third sector, is that kind of the overarching objective?
Yes, they're all the same. In every one of those things you've described, there are owners, and they're often shareholders in the corporate world or shareholders in an SME, or they're members or subscribers, depending on the type of company you have. So you have owners. They all have boards. Some of them are called trustees if they're in the charity space, but they've all got directors on them. And how we know that someone is actually a director is that they're registered at Companies House. Because sometimes in the corporate world, people have the title director, and sometimes even in social enterprise world, people have the title director, but they're not actually a board director. So I always check on Companies House and go, oh, right. So they're legally accountable. When you're listed on Companies House, whatever your structure is, or on the Charity Commission as a trustee, then you're legally accountable. And of course, in every single one of these, we have to have people doing the work. They don't always get paid for doing the work. As founders know,
Yeah. I was going to say as well, there's something about when you get to that point and you have your purpose and you realize that there's something you're passionate about and your objectives and what you want to do, it's then, how do I know whether or not I should be limited? How do I know if I should be a CIC or a CIO? Do I need a board at this stage? It's just me right now, but I'm going to be needing some funding. I'm going to be needing to, um, people have that question. They get quite confused. Is there any advice you can think of about, what people may be able to do when they get to that stage? They know they need to do something. They need to register something, but they're not quite sure which one to register.
So I think the first thing is to decide whether you have to register anything, because we do have something in the UK called a sole trader, and you can work on your idea as a sole trader for ages, and then you're not incorporated. And so you would come up with operational parameters, but you wouldn't have governance, and you wouldn't have this new legal entity that you're responsible for deciding what it is that you're the parent of. And the reason why you would incorporate is if you want to get funding, because then you want the funding to go into this other entity that's not you. If you want to employ people, you can employ people as a sole trader, but it's much less risky to employ them as a company. And the law is geared up to supporting you as an employer to set up this other entity. And finally, if you want to get big contracts, a lot of organizations, whether they're educational institutions or the NHS or the public sector, and some corporates, they like to have a company that they're contracting with. And so if those are the things you want to do, then set up a new entity. And then you're right, there's this whole spectrum. And on the one end, we have business as usual. You can set up a private company, and the purpose of that company under UK law is to create profit for shareholders. Most companies are set up that way. That's business as usual. Yeah. On the other end of the spectrum, we have charities. And charities are set up to create good against a specific charitable purpose. And between those two, you have this broad spectrum of people who might be running a business, but they're doing some social good in terms of CSR, corporate social responsibility. They might be like the Body Shop, running what I would call a social business, because they are run by a social entrepreneur. They've got social aims in their operations, but they haven't changed the articles. They haven't said, in addition to being a private company, it's all around profit for shareholders, we want to be business not as usual. We want a purpose in there. And the minute you start tweaking your articles of a company to add a purpose in, you're stepping into business not as usual. And if your purpose is social or environmental, you're becoming a social enterprise. And then, of course, you have a choice, because you've mentioned community interest companies, you've mentioned KIOs, charitable incorporated organizations. I think the most important thing about that choice is it's not simple, and there isn't only one answer. And so often people talk to me and go, I'm just getting more and more confused. There's so many options and I'm getting it wrong. Can you tell me how to pick the right one? Also, you talk to one lawyer or one accountant and they tell you this is the right way, and someone else tells you something else. So let me just give you a tip. The professionals don't all know every one of these legal structures. There's in effect about 11 options if we count them all out.
Well, yeah, I was actually going to confuse things for you even further, because somebody had written in and asked, please can you explain what a B Corp is? I've been hearing all about a B Corp. So just to spin something in the mix and make it even more confusing, but yet unconfusing, because Karen is going to give us her specialist advice and explain what exactly the B Corp is.
Okay. So if we sticking with the fact that there's lots of legal structures, and the key essence of a legal structure when you want to have some impact as an owner is you can choose what's in it. And you can make it what I've called business not as usual, or you can make it a charity. And yes, there's a lot of options there. And I think being open to the fact that it could be something you hadn't thought of and looking for help. And certainly anyone contacted me on LinkedIn, I can recommend a couple, like the program we do, the half-day workshop. I get into this in great detail. I go into every one of the legal structures. So I'm not going to do that today. But B Corp is a really interesting phenomena. And what they've done really well is own the branding space. So when I talk about intention and perception, one of the things about perception is whose perception matters to you.
Right.
And what do you want them to see you as? And so you can get little badges, in effect, that help you go, I'm a this or I'm a this. And a social enterprise as a name is very confusing. But you could get the badge of being a member of Social Enterprise UK, or you could get a badge of signing up to the voluntary code in Scotland. And those badges are linked to what you've done in your articles, but they're also you saying, I want to be part of this gang.
Right.
And I want to be perceived as part of the gang. And B Corp have owned that perception bit really well. They are another badge. To throw in a complete spanner, a different badge is investors in people. So if that's the perception you want, regardless of what your underlying structure is, you go for that badge because you want to be seen as someone who does that. And what B Corp does is they ask you to put 5 clauses into your articles. So you could technically be a charity B Corp or a social enterprise of any type B Corp, or just a business as usual with a little bit of a tweak B Corp. And those clauses suggest that the directors take into account other people's opinions. So I said at the beginning that a business as usual social company, all about shareholders.
Yeah.
Nobody else's importance. By law, a board of a private company that has normal articles has to do everything to support the organization to create more profit for shareholders. That is their legal obligation.
Yeah.
So what the B Corp says is we'd really like to extend that legal obligation and say this company exists for people, planet, and profit. And we want directors to take into account all stakeholders, and they list employees, shareholders, the community, suppliers, and they list those. And the other clause that the B Corps ask you to put in is a clause about reporting on your impact. So if you've said you want to be great for people, planet, and profit, what are you measuring?
Yeah.
And what I like about putting those clauses in is they're really light touch. They don't make you a social enterprise, but what they say is, I want to be in the B Corp gang. Now, what does the B Corp gang really mean? It's an international movement that's based on this marketing badge of a B Corp. It's not a legal structure. Lots of people come to me and say, I want to be this new legal structure. It's not a legal structure. It's a badge, but it depends on you doing 2 things. One is putting these clauses in, saying you care about people, planet, and profit. And the second is doing a test. And in this test, you have to get over 80 out of 200. It's a really comprehensive test looking at governance, looking at your impact on community, looking at workers, looking at environmental issues. And when you do the test, it's free, and they give you tons of resources, and they help you. And when you've got over 80 in your points, then you can say to the B Corp, well, I've got over 80 and I have my badge, I have my clause, can you give me the badge? And they say, pay us some money, we'll check if you're telling the truth, we'll do a little test, and then you can be in the gang. And being in the gang means you get basically free access to everyone else who's signed up to this.
Wow.
So in the UK, we have about 250 B Corps, but worldwide, we're talking hundreds of thousands. And what I like about the gang is we've got people in Mexico and Nicaragua who've got B Corp status. And they will have put different clauses in, because each legislation, each country has different clauses that kind of need to be put in. We only have 5 because our company law is actually quite good. But in countries where there's no good governance best practice, the B Corp says, okay, this is what good practice looks like. Put these clauses in. So if you want to be part of that gang, it's a great little badge. It costs you, like many of these badges do.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I'd been hearing about it, but I was of the latter, like what you said. I thought it's another structure. But I've learned something today. It's a badge or an accreditation of some kind that benefits you as you go along. So thank you so much. That has been really, really helpful. We are going to go into a short commercial break. So listeners, please do not touch that dial. You are locked into the Power Hour with myself, Louise Power, and my guest, Karen Anderson, talking all things governance. We'll be right back in a few minutes.
Businesses, time is running out. Starting on the 1st of Jan, anyone who deals with Europe will have to follow new rules on exports, imports, tariffs, data, and hiring. I know we've all got our hands full right now, but basically, if any part of your business crosses borders, you need to do something about it now. This is happening. So make sure you have everything covered. We haven't got long. Start now at gov.uk/transition. Check, change, go.
Here at Duncan Lewis Solicitors, we specialise in immigration and family law. We have a proven track record of successful applicants who we've helped secure permanent residency for. From spouse visas to seeking asylum, our expert advisors will assist you throughout the whole application process. We offer a free no obligation consultation, so call us now on 0208 432 3350. That's 0208 432 3350, or visit us at 298 Romford Road, London, E79HD.
Super Best Meze Grill, the Turkish restaurant where all our food is prepared to perfection. Our mixed grill family platters include lamb shish, Adana kebab, lamb ribs, chicken doner, chicken wings and lamb chops, and all are served with rice, salad, along with a selection of our cold mezes. To see our full menu, go to superbestmezegrill.co.uk. For the perfect dining setting, visit us now at 21 to 23 Broadway, Stratford, E15 4B, or call 0208 555 335. Super Best Meze Grill.
If you want to advertise your business on Revive FM, then visit www.revivefm.co.uk or contact our sales team now on 07944 565616. That's 07944 565616. Advertise with Revive FM.
If you're looking for a unique bespoke cake made especially for your big day, then look no further. Here at Sugar Sprinkle Cakery, we design some of the most imaginative and delicious home-baked cakes for your special occasions. We do fresh cream, buttercream, eggless and vegan cakes. Check us out on Instagram or Facebook at Sugar Sprinkle Cakery, or just call 07932 665 833. That's 07932 665 833.
This is an important update about coronavirus. To help save lives, new national restrictions are now in place until the 2nd of December. You must stay at home. Only leave home for food, medical reasons, exercise, education, or work. You must work from home if you can and avoid travel unless essential. Go to gov.uk/coronavirus for latest guidance and exemptions. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Nikah, talaq, counselling on matrimonial disputes, Islamic wills, Islamic law of inheritance, or an Islamic verdict on any other issue. The Muslim Sharia Council is at your service. We provide official certification, and our experienced and highly qualified imams are available to provide you with guidance when needed. MQI London is based at 292 to 296 Romford Road, Forest Gate. We are open from Monday to Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. or alternatively, call us now on 0208 257 1786.
Revive FM
94.0. On the radio,
on your mobile,
and online.
Hello and welcome back. You are locked into Revive FM 94.0 on the Power Hour. This show is about community matters, diversity and inclusion, a platform for women, leadership, entrepreneurship and inspirational stories. And your host today is myself, Louise Power, and my guest is Karen Anderson, and she is a social business specialist. Welcome back, Karen. So before the break,
Hi, Louise.
you was giving us an in-depth analysis of governance and the structures around governance. And I know that you answered this question kind of before, but I have Frankie, who has sent a message in via LinkedIn, and just reiterate again very, very quickly, does governance management vary from sector to sector?
I think the basics of governance don't vary in that you have the different the framework's the same. Obviously, the intensity is different. So in a charity with a board of trustees and members owning it and volunteers doing the work, your governance is going to look slightly different from a corporate company where you have shareholders and a board of directors and paid employees doing the work. You probably need quite a lot more structure around the latter, but they're still the same elements.
Still the same elements. Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you ever so much. And I was thinking in the commercial break about the local area where I am in Newham and East London, where there are a lot of small businesses and they will all have different structures. But I was wondering how governance can benefit small businesses and the kind of things that small businesses can be thinking about, especially during the climate that we're in regards to governance and how that governance can benefit them.
So most small businesses, if they're not sole traders, are going to be a company limited by shares. And most of them will be set up with the same shareholder, founder, and the one person on the board. They probably won't have other directors. They might have one other person. And I think in that space, most people think governance is not important. But I think there's a great benefit to having some other people on your board, because the point of a board is to keep you on the strategic plan and to remind you of what you wanted to do, to keep you accountable. They're the people who I kind of say lift your head up to the horizon. And it's so easy at this time to get focused on what's right in front of us, what we're in the moment, in what's the urgent, noisy things happening in our lives right now. And a board of directors would help you think about the strategic things, about the important things. And there's always this balance between what's important and what's urgent. And a board would always say, right, we'll support you to do the urgent stuff because that is key. But actually, it's that important strategic stuff that's useful. And I know what people are saying next is, well, I don't want to have board meetings every month and have all these strangers sticking their fingers in my business.
I was actually going to say that one of the anxieties may be, well, I don't want, I've got a small business. I've been running this business for 5 years or whatever. I don't want somebody sticking their nose in and telling me what to do. I've always bought from these suppliers, or I've always done things this way. Is there something we can sort of say to them about the difference between what a board would be doing and their own decisions? Because there is a variance, isn't there?
Yes. So the first thing is, when I talked about you being an owner and a parent and creating the entity, and I said that what you get to do is choose what it is. The other thing you get to do is appoint the board of directors. So you, as the owner of the company, are in charge of the board of directors as an owner. So in that role, you could technically fire a board of directors. However, in another role, you are a director of the company. And you're what's called an executive director, because you are working on the business and you're a director. You're paid by the business. You are completely in the business. That's what makes you an executive director. And what's helpful is if there's one of you, to have just two other people, perhaps, who are what we'd call a non-exec director. And non-exec implies two things. One is they don't depend on your business to pay them anything. And the second is they're independent. Yeah. And a good non-exec director will say to you, you talked about doing this. You haven't had time to do it. Maybe this is a different way you could do it. Hold you accountable to the plan. But at the end of the day, it's your business. And that's referring to your control of the organization as an owner. And I'm here to support you in your business. So that there's that part. And where will you find these people? And why would they do it for free? So part of it is there's a whole lot of people who are studying governance and they're paying to learn how to be a non-exec director. But they need experience before they can be on a board and get paid. And so they're interested in working with people, because they might have been working in middle management in a corporate and they really don't know what it's like to run a small business. And whether they're helping you keep accountable to your plan, or whether they're on a charity board, or whether they're edging their way up to maybe a PLC board, they have to look at the world differently. And it's in the name, non-exec. They're not supposed to stick their fingers in. They're supposed to learn how to hold you accountable. And just a little note, everyone says, well, is a non-exec director on Companies House? What's the legal status? From your point of view, when you're a director on the board, all of you are equal. All of you are registered as directors at Companies House. We just call you two different things to help you understand. But the second thing is you might want to be on a board.
Right.
Because it will help you look at your business differently. And so if in the local community, a bunch of you said, you know what, we could be on each other's boards. And it's not that we want to interfere in each other's businesses. We just want to have an accountability and go, you know, you said you were going to do this. How can we make this happen?
Yeah. And when I think about like the question, what does a board look like? I think the benefits are that you will have people that are needing experience, but you also have different people that have different skill sets. And
Yes.
that's an added value to the business, the small business or the charity or the social enterprise, because you will have different people, different skill sets that will be able to objectify different experiences, information, training, whatever that is, in order to help grow the business and give different points of view about how you do things.
Completely. And you know, you mentioned that we met at Cambridge, but we're also both involved in Changing the Chemistry,
That's
which
right.
is a charity that's set up to get lots of people onto lots of boards to change how people think, because it's really easy for a board to get stuck in the mud, just like any other organization. And the thing to think about if you're looking for people on your board is not to go around finding people just like you.
Yeah.
You really don't want people just like you because you're there. So you tick that box. So people with different skills from you, different types of people, different ages, you know, diversity of thought as well as diversity of experience is what you're looking for.
Yeah, it's like it's about having different kinds of points of views from different parts of the different experiences in the world as well, isn't it?
Yes.
And if people were sort of thinking, well, you know, this person isn't in my network, but yet, you know, I would really like them to be part of my board. How do I even approach somebody about being part of my board? And, you know, how do I even go about that? Is there something special that I need to do that? What would we sort of?
So I think what's important is to think about it in advance and to have what I would call a board pack where you have a job description and you say, I'm looking for directors. And I have a little table that I call an audit, but it is just a table saying, what kind of experience are we looking for? And then you go down and say, well, I've got all those things. Oh, I might need someone who's bought and sold property, or I might need someone who's got experience negotiating large contracts because that's the way I want to grow. So you list those things. And if it's your first board, I would also put you want people who've got a bit of board experience so they can help you run your board. You also think ahead and say, realistically, how often do I want to talk to these people? And you can decide once a year is great. I would suggest probably 3 times a year would be the lowest I'd go for if you're going to make an effort to get a board. And I would suggest that unless you really want to talk to them every single month, probably every quarter, it is a good thing for the average small business trying to do this for the first time. And you need to have thought of that in advance because you put that in the pack. And I would suggest you don't approach the people you want to be on your board and say, be on my board.
Yeah.
Because the relationship then becomes, you're doing me a favor. What you want to do is approach everyone in your network and say, you know, my organization has grown and I've got these opportunities and I think it's time I got a board. It's kind of what companies do as they start to grow up, and my company's reached that exciting stage. And so what I have is this link on my website where you can see what I'm looking for. Please, will you share it? Because I just want everyone I know to know about the great news. And then they can apply, and then you can interview them and talk to them and say, well, how would it work on a board?
Yeah.
Rather than you asking them to do you a favor, and then the power dynamics out.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant because I think that on both sides, you know, being on the board isn't always a paid role. You know, people go and become part of boards as voluntarily, yeah, and then they earn different skill sets for themselves. as well as supporting a benefit in your company. So I
Yes.
think on both sides, it's a win-win situation. So I think it's great. And yes, like you were saying, we're both part of changing the chemistry. Changing the chemistry is all about diversity of thought and diversifying the boardroom, because we know that it needs to be more inclusive. And that's why I love the charity that we're part of so much. I'm actually one of the board of directors for Changing the Chemistry. Very proud to be able to say that this year. And, I think that we've got some really good plans in the pipeline about what we're going to be doing in the future and into 2021. So what I wanted to go on to next is about social entrepreneurship, because people may be, in the know, but for those that are not, what would you say to them is a social enterprise?
So there's a difference between a social entrepreneur and a social enterprise. So a social entrepreneur is a person who wants to use business to change the world. And they could do that employed in a bank. They could do that like Anita Roddick did. I mentioned the Body Shop earlier. She was a social entrepreneur. She was using business to change the world. So they could start a business, they could start a charity, they could start a project. But the minute they decide to create a legal entity that could get a social enterprise badge, so could become a member of Social Enterprise UK, then they've created a social enterprise. And so it's that step change of saying, I'm not just going to be someone socially minded running a business, but I want my business to be dedicated to a social mission alongside profit.
Right. So if they were to say, right, and I want my business to be profitable, how do I navigate that though? The fact that, some of my profit then goes back into the business, or some of my profit goes back into the community. Is there something quite simple that you can say that where they can kind of navigate that?
So from a social enterprise in the UK's point of view, we kind of expect you to have the same emphasis on profit as on your social mission. But your social mission can be anything. And a lot of social enterprises, the social mission is embedded inside them. So I've worked with a social enterprise in Northampton that is a logistics company, and they happen to have registered as a community interest company. So their badge is solid social enterprise. What they do is they aim to create jobs for people who've just come out of prison. And they focus on people who've had, particularly people with violent crimes in their background, where it's hard for these people to be reintegrated into the community. And they take them on a training course first, which they pay for within the business. And it is a business. It runs as a business. They sell their services as a business. And then these people become part of their team and gradually move up through the team. So when you go to visit them and you look at their warehouse, they'll say, I'll bring one of my guys over to tell you his story. And it's not that everyone in the organization has been in prison. It's that a whole lot of people run this business together, and they have a variety of people who have a disadvantaged background.
Wonderful.
And that's where the social mission is like completely woven into the business. And I think if Anita Roddick was alive today setting up the Body Shop, it would also be woven in, because it was woven in at an operational level for her. Every supplier decision and employment decision and how people were treated was committed to values and purpose. And so it's how you express the change you want to make in the world. And it's not just in your articles. So I always say, if you can describe the social change in a way that works in your articles, and it doesn't have to be fancy legal language, it can just be simple. Like I work with a social entrepreneur who is setting up a card that is currently being used as a frequent flyer card for Rwandan Airlines. And his social enterprise is basically saying, we can't have people traveling. Obviously now it's not happening, but with suitcases of cash, because they have closed currencies and they have money under their beds because they don't feel comfortable with banks. So how do we take these people and make them feel comfortable having a bank account? And that's his purpose. But he obviously has to pay to be a card company, and he has to pay all the big wholesale banks. So what he said is, I'm here to offer this service, a card that allows people to bank and move currency safely across borders. But I will never charge refugees, women entrepreneurs, and students a sign-up fee. And because he knows that he's doing business not as usual, and he knows that he's going to have directors who go, well, it's all about money, so we can just make more money by change it. Don't call it a sign-up fee. Call it something else. So we won't charge them to sign up, but we'll just charge them a joining fee or an activation fee.
I like that. I like that. Hey, good going. I need to look. No, it's good. It's got such a fantastic purpose, you know.
So what he put in his articles, just to finish that, is he said, we'll never charge these people a sign-up fee or any equivalent fee, but we'll charge them transaction fees, because once you've got money in the account, you've got transaction fee. Now, he can express that in his articles just like that. And then when he talks about his business, he says, if you are a women entrepreneur or a refugee or a student, you can sign up for free. Once you start doing transactions, there will be a transaction charge, because I can't avoid that. And so it's all about articulating the change you want to make and finding a way to describe it so everyone else gets it when you're not in the room. Because let's face it, we all could be run over by a bus. Not at the moment because we're locked in, but normal life, we could get run over by a bus. And what would happen if we hadn't written down what we wanted?
Yeah, it's so fundamentally important that as well. I think what's brought me back is, if there's one director, then you haven't really shared that with anybody as well. So somebody needs to be able to, you need to be able to share that with somebody. Somebody else can understand what that legacy plan is. We're going to go into a quick, short commercial break again, but we will be right back. You are locked into the Power Hour. Please do not touch that dial.
We're facing the biggest health challenge of our generation, and we've shown that together we're stronger than ever. But to keep making a difference, we need to support each other. If you're a man and you've had coronavirus recently, then you might just have the antibodies to help save lives in your blood plasma. That's why we urgently need men to donate. Giving blood plasma is safe and easy. Be the difference. Search Donate Plasma or call 0300 123 2323 today.
Super Best Meze Grill, the Turkish restaurant where all our food is prepared to perfection. Our mixed grill family platters include lamb shish, chicken shish, Adana kebab, lamb ribs, chicken doner, chicken wings and lamb chops. And all are served with rice, salad, along with a selection of our cold mezes. To see our full menu, go to superbestmezegrill.co.uk. For the perfect dining setting, visit us now at 21 to 23 Broadway, Stratford, E15 4B, or call 0208 555 3335. Super Best Meze Grill.
This is a message from the government. The law has changed. You must self-isolate if you test positive for coronavirus or are told to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. If you do not, you risk a penalty of £1,000 or more. Testing and isolating are vital to stopping the spread of coronavirus. Because this is so important, the government is now providing financial support for those who need it whilst self-isolating. You could be eligible for a £500 support payment if you're on low income and are unable to work because you're self-isolating. Find out if you're eligible at gov.uk/coronavirus. Break the cycle of infection, not the law. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Businesses who deal with Europe, listen up. Time is running out. You've got new rules coming in on the 1st of January 2021. That's just round the corner. And getting ready can take longer than you think. These things always do. I know it's been a tough old year, but the countdown to the 1st of January has started. Don't get left behind. Start now at gov.uk/transition. Check, change, go.
Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences provides quality Islamic education for children aged between 5 and 15 years old. As well as teaching classical Islam, including Tajweed, Fiqh, Seerah and Aqidah, we endeavour to equip children with essential Islamic manners, morals and values. Here at MSIS, our experienced teachers create an inspirational learning environment where we strive to cater for the needs of every child. For enrolment inquiries, inquire in person at Minhaj School of Islamic Sciences, Monday to Friday, 5 to 7 p.m. at 292-296 Romford Road, or email admin.edu_London@minhajuk.org.
The new NHS COVID-19 app immediately shows me the risk of coronavirus in my area, so I can warn Mel, It lets me quickly check into venues with a QR scanner so I can protect Alid.
It tells me fast if I've been in contact with other app users who have coronavirus, so I can alert Emma.
It helps me protect all my loved ones, even Auntie Sue. The more of us who get the app, the better we can control coronavirus. Protect your loved ones.
Get the NHS COVID-19 app.
Download now at Google Play or the App Store.
I wash my hands to protect my family.
I wear a face covering to protect my mates.
I make space to protect my colleagues.
Hands.
Face.
Space.
I wash my hands to protect strangers.
I wear a face covering to protect other passengers.
I make space to protect you.
Hands.
Face.
Space.
As we spend more time indoors, we need to do whatever we can to help protect each other from coronavirus. So please, wash hands, cover face, make space.
Revive FM
94.0. On the radio.
On your mobile.
And online.
Hello, welcome back to the Power Hour with myself, your host, Louise Power, and my guest, Karen Anderson. Welcome back. We have been talking all things governance. And just before the break, Karen was giving us an in-depth explanation about social entrepreneurship and social enterprise, which are two different things. And what I wanted to ask you about was the legal structures for social enterprise. Would you mind explaining and differentiate those structures for me?
Okay. So the first thing I'll do is start with the ones that are clearly social enterprise. And that would be something called a company limited by guarantee. And so everyone says, I'm a limited company. What they really mean is I'm a limited by shares company. And what happened about 40 years ago is people wanted a business that wasn't driven by profit. And they said, well, the best way to stop people being focused on profit within companies is to remove shares. So instead of having shares where you can get dividends and you can buy and sell them and make money in the sale of shares, we're going to create a membership structure. And that's what's underpinning a company limited by guarantee. You can go on the same place where you set up a company limited by shares at gov.uk, and you can say, I want to set up a company limited by guarantee. And because at the heart of it, it's by membership and not shares, you're automatically not for profit. You're automatically putting yourself in the social enterprise bucket, because social enterprise is saying we are interested in equal profit and mission. Now, if you set up a company limited by guarantee, you then have a choice. You can be a company limited by guarantee. You can turn it into a company limited by guarantee cooperative. There are other versions of cooperatives, but one of them is a company limited by guarantee one. You can then register as a charity. And in that case, you will be both a company limited by guarantee and a charity. Now, I normally say charities are not always social enterprises, and that's because a social enterprise is about using business to change the world. A charitable registration implies that perhaps you're not using business, but there are definitely some charities out there that are what I would call enterprising charities, where there just happens that the registration of a charity is useful to running a business. So we've got charities, we've got regular companies limited by guarantee, and then we've got something called a community interest company. And what happens is a community interest company sits on top of a company limited by guarantee. And what it says is, just like a charity, you have an external regulator who says, what is your social mission? Are you fulfilling it? In a really passive way. They ask you to report on it. It also says that once you put something into a community interest company, you can't take it out without putting the market value in. So if you own a limited company and you have a van and you want to buy a new van, you just choose to buy a new van, and you might give your pal or your wife or your partner or your child the old van. You just give it to them, because in a company limited by shares where you own all the shares, nobody cares what you do with that van.
Right.
But if you were running a charity and you had a van and it was old, you couldn't just give it to anyone, because it has been bought by the charity and it belongs to the charity. It's locked into the charity. And so you have to say, well, if I sold this, I could get 500 quid on the open market. So my kid or my partner, pay me 500 quid and then it's okay. Same thing with a community interest company. Once something's in it, you can't just give it away without saying, what's it worth on the market? And so what you're doing is you're dedicating that business and all its assets to creating this social change. But it's not like a charity in the sense that it is a business, whereas a charity is about a social purpose. It's a business, and you can pay directors. So, we were talking earlier, most of the time people are volunteering and they're not being paid.
Yep.
You can pay directors of community interest companies. However, if you're not paying yourself as a founder of a social enterprise yet, please don't feel obliged to pay your directors. It's kind of a no-brainer, but I have to say it. The fact that you can pay them doesn't mean you have to. And also, if you get social investment, I've been on the panels of investment for social enterprises where someone has said, well, we're paying this director, and the social investors are saying, we don't want our money to go to that investor because we know you're not paying yourself yet. We know you're taking investment to grow. Why are you paying it out? So that's a community interest company with a company limited by guarantee underneath it. So those are the things that the minute I look at them, I say they're social enterprise. They're not a business as usual. And then we have companies limited by shares, which I said at the beginning, or business as usual, what we call a limited company when we're talking about it. And you can make these social enterprises. And you make them a social enterprise in two ways. The first way is you just put a clause in that says this social mission, like my friend with the card company, saying my purpose of this company is to set up a card company and I'll sell it to airlines and I'll sell it to lots of people, but I'll let people, refugees and students sign up for free forever. That's my commitment. Puts that in his articles, and now he's a social enterprise. He's a company limited by shares, but he's a social enterprise. He's saying, I'm doing things differently. And I'm doing them differently in the DNA of my business. The other thing you can do is make it a community interest company limited by shares. So often people talk about community interest companies as this big bucket of the same thing, or they call them KICs.
Right.
And they say they're all the same. Technically, there's 5 different sets of articles between those 2 different types of KICs.
Okay.
So you've got 2 on one side with a company limited by guarantee, and you've got 3 on the side of company limited by shares. And so when someone tells me, oh, I don't like KICs, they're bad, I'm going, so who did you talk to and what type of kick did they have? And it's the same thing with social enterprises. People come to me and say, I want to be incorporated as a social enterprise. Let's make me a social enterprise. I'm going, okay, so there's 11 different things we can do to make you a social enterprise. Why do you want to be one? And always it's perception.
Right.
People are saying to me, so-and-so said I should be a social enterprise because then I can get this money, I can get this contract, I can get this thing. And so whilst we're digging under what exactly a social enterprise structure is, I would ask you, why do you want this? And the only real answer should be, I believe that I want a legacy that is both about a profitable business and about changing the world. And I want that embedded forever, whether I'm here or not. That's your intention. And then I say, great, then let's find a legal structure out of these ones I've talked about that fits the way you want to grow your business. And if someone's told you being a social enterprise will be useful, I'd go back to them and ask them, so which social enterprise are you thinking of? Are you thinking of a company limited by guarantee? Are you actually thinking of a charity? Are you thinking about a kick? And if you are, do you treat kicks limited by shares the same as kicks limited by guarantee?
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it because you get to apply it to something tasty too. But yeah, no, it's you've really been able to break it down, and I think that's the main thing. Most people have got a purpose and a passion for changing something in the world, and it's just about putting yourself and being able to understand how you can evolve in the best possible structure for you. So I think that you've explained that really, really, really well. And this will be on all networks, on social media, and the links will be on Karen and I's LinkedIn, and so that you can go and Spotify, on the Power Spotify, and here on Revive, so you can go away and replay that and take the information away. And if you do need to get in touch with Karen and you'd like to know a little bit more information, then you can always do that. And we are coming up towards the end of the show, but before we do, Karen, I would like to ask you about what the future looks like for you, and what you've got coming up for 2021, because of course we're in a lockdown, number one. And then after the lockdown, it's going to be Christmas. Then it's going to be the end of the year. So we're all in this really, really peculiar place, but yet spending our time working on what the future looks like. So I know you have some things planned. So I thought it would be a really good opportunity for you to tell everybody about what those things are.
Thank you, Louise. So as you've gathered, governance is one of my passions. I do not even secretly read people's articles. I do that. And I think it's so important for startups to know about that. And so I will always continue to do that. But one of the things that I've realized, having worked with social entrepreneurs now for 18 years with about 1,000 different organizations, is lots of those people are getting past startup and they're starting to say, now what? I've made it. I've made a profitable business, but how do I build a team? How do I actually make a board function? Because you can have some non-exec directors and get them to help you, but really working a board requires you to have a bit of headspace. And how do I go from being a founder to being a CEO? And so I'm really interested in working with people in that space, particularly women founders of social enterprises. And I've called it Step It Up. It's
like
quite
that.
blatant on my LinkedIn, but it is really about what next. I've got it to this point, what next? I will still never stop harping on about governance. And Louise also knows I have another passion for Gallup strengths. I love leading from strengths. And strengths are all about what you're great at and what your passion is. So that will always be part of what I do.
And maybe we can talk about the Strengths Finder when we come back on the next show. Because there is so many things to ask you, because you have so many hats and expertise. I think we could have a show for each of those hats, actually.
That would be fun.
And of course, you are also going to be doing the incubator, incubator at the Cambridge Judge University as well, continuation of that.
Yes, and we will continue to run our monthly Getting Started with Your Social Enterprise. So if you're genuinely at the point where you think you want to start a social enterprise, get in touch with me on LinkedIn is the easiest, but as Louise said, we're going to be all over the place. And I can just send you the link, because we talk governance, we talk social investment, which people always want to know, and we talk about how do you actually make something to sell.
Yeah. And the show's coming to a close, but if you would like to speak to me about how you get onto a board, I'm also, as I said earlier, part of Changing the Chemistry, and you're more than welcome to get in touch with me about how you can get onto a board if you're interested in that. So I'm now going to end the show. Thank you ever so much for joining me. It has been a pleasure, and I will speak to you soon. And I look forward to catching up.
Thanks, Louise. Bye.
Thank you to all the listeners for joining us on the Power Hour today. We'll be back again, same time, same place next week. Take care. Stay safe.
The new NHS COVID-19 app showed me